It all started with a small nip at my ankle in the middle of the night. I was half asleep when the pain came. I jumped at the small sting, but didn't stop moving. I needed to go to the washroom. Nothing else mattered at that moment. After finishing my task, I paused in the well-lit room to glance at my ankle. I wet down a cloth to clean away a small bit of blood. At the time, I assumed my ankle had caught on the edge of the bed, or the lid of a storage bin under it. I never would have guessed what actually happened that night, or how much danger I was in. I work 3 jobs at the moment. One full-time, one part-time, and another from which I only get 3 hours on Sunday. I barely have enough time to get from one job to another, let alone relax. My main goal is to save up, buy a house, and retire early. It's depressing that this simple dream is nearly impossible for people my age. I'm currently renting a room in a small 3-floor condo. There were 3 of us, but the one roommate moved out. Our landlord wants to redo the basement to turn it into another space to rent. I need to find a new place before that happens. I'm barely sleeping as it is. I don't think I could handle more people in this place if they were all like Ryan. I've had a suspicion that Ryan pays his rent by less than legal means. In this economy, you do what you gotta do to cover your bills. I disliked him because he committed every bad roommate sin. He was loud at night, smoked in his room, ate food that wasn't his, brought friends over on the weekends and let them stay for days, and sometimes didn't flush. That was honestly what bothered me the most. I hated going downstairs at night to use the small washroom to avoid the mess Ryan left behind. Of course, I told my landlord about all this, but he hasn't done anything about it aside from bothering Ryan to not smoke in the house. I was exhausted from dealing with too many hours at work and a terrible roommate. Even so, I should have taken some events more seriously. It was 2 a.m. when I got home from work. Collapsing in bed, I was ready to pass out before I got ready for another shift. Some scratching kept me awake. What was Ryan doing? Did he get a pet while I was gone? Raising my tired head, I carefully listened. The scratching sound wasn't coming from his room, but nearby. I realized it was coming from under my bed. Did we have mice? That would be annoying. I got out of bed and grabbed my phone for a flashlight. An odd sound came, as if something large had bumped into the bottom of my bed frame. My heart jumped as I glanced around, expecting to see a wild animal. Nothing. There was a lack of dust bunnies, even though I hadn't cleaned recently. One of my storage bins had been slightly moved. I didn't see any other traces of an animal or the cause of the scratching noise. I did hear Ryan start blasting god-awful music in his room. Sighing, I got up to go down the hallway. His bedroom door was right across from mine. When our doors were open, you could see our beds from the hallway. I pounded on his door, asking him to keep it down. The music was lowered, but not turned off. His excuse was he didn't know I was home. He was still making some noise, but I was able to fall asleep. I wasn't expecting to see Ryan the next morning, because he normally crawled out of bed after I left for work. I saw him pacing the kitchen, waiting for me, agitated. "Dude, I know you don't like me, but you can't take my stuff," he said, sounding annoyed. He looked like he hadn't slept. That was the only way he would be up around this time. "What are you talking about?" I said, wondering if I had used the last of his condiments by accident. "Come on, don't be like that. All my socks are missing and 3 bags of my product are gone." I raised an eyebrow. Who would want his disgusting, unwashed socks? I shook my head, figuring he just misplaced them. "Have you checked your entire room? Maybe it's..." I started, but he cut me off. "I know you need the money, but I have customers waiting on that stuff." He was getting angry, which was not how I wanted to start my day. Who would I sell it to? And it's legal now. Why would anyone get it from me? I don't have the connections you do to start with. And I don't even want to look at your dirty laundry, let alone touch it. I shrugged. He narrowed his eyes at me, letting the thought run through his head. He saw me as too much of a nerd to have friends who did cool things like smoking his product. I had been the only person in the house since he noticed it was missing. Unless it was in his room somewhere, he didn't understand where his things had gone off to. I don't want to accuse your friends, but would any of them copy your key and take the stuff as a prank? I didn't know how often Ryan left the house. Then again, he slept like the dead, so someone could walk right into his room and take anything while he was passed out. This answer made more sense to him than his roommate suddenly stealing from him. Maybe. But if I find out it's you, it'll be hell to pay, he threatened. I didn't take him seriously. After all, I wasn't stealing his stuff. We requested to get our locks changed, and I hoped that would put an end to all of this. A few days later, Ryan's product appeared in the middle of the hallway, the bags ripped open. I saw it the moment he was coming out of his room to use the washroom. I had just gotten home. He saw me in my uniform and didn't see any traces of his premium stuff on my clothing, so I was in the clear. We spent the next hour making sure there wasn't an animal living in the condo, and that all the entrances were sealed. If we heard noises, we would need to call a pest control company to deal with it. I really thought we had figured it out. It was either an animal we hadn't seen or one of his friends. Another week went by. Every day, Ryan seemed to get more and more agitated. None of my things went missing or were tampered with. I didn't own much. The few storage bins kept winter clothing because I didn't have a dresser. All my dirty laundry went into a basket, and I kept my clean stuff in another basket. Aside from some important papers and books, I didn't have anything of importance in my room for someone to mess with. No wonder they went to Ryan's room first. It was cluttered with useless high-end items. Countless never-worn shoes. So many LED lights and a layer of clothing collecting dust on his floor. How did he even notice his socks were missing in that mess? I had been hearing scratching noises at night, but whenever I turned on the lights, it stopped. I thought I was just hearing things, because we found no traces of our mystery animal. It all came to a head during one of my rare nights off, and when a storm hit. I couldn't work even if I had a shift. Powerful winds with heavy rain kept most people off the road. Thunder rumbled outside. The power went out, leaving the only light the constant flashes of the storm. I was worried about the food in the fridge. For once, I was glad Ryan had eaten most of it. I made a sandwich before the lunch meat got too warm, and headed upstairs, only to be confronted by my roommate. He was standing in the middle of the hallway, holding his phone to use as a flashlight. I had gotten a battery-powered lantern in case the power went out like tonight. "What's up?" I asked him. A pressure started behind my eyes. My body knew this encounter would end in a migraine. "Where's all my stuff? My phone cords are gone. More socks, sheets, blankets. I had a bunch of gold chains. I put a camera in my room and... but I don't know how you messed that up too." That was odd. He hadn't had any friends over since the locks were changed. I wasn't taking his stuff, so where was it going? "You cleaned your room?" I suggested. He slapped my food out of my hand, which I wasn't pleased by. He stomped a foot and gestured towards his door. "It's a small-ass room. Where do you think it's hiding?" He shot back. This time, I put my foot down as well. "I can smell your mess from here. You don't clean at all. Your room's a biohazard, and I have no idea how you live like that. God, when was the last time you even showered?" On top of all my hours, I was the only person who cleaned the common areas. Ryan created a mess and never helped with chores. He only ever cleaned out the fridge. He never stole my body wash, though, because he never bathed. He must be misplacing his stuff, because no one would want it because of the smell. "That has nothing to do with anything. I pay for my room and I can do whatever I want with it. My friends aren't taking my shit. And if you claim you're not, then what? Some little gremlin shows up in the middle of the night to take it?" His face was red from anger, and he raised his cell phone, blinding me for a second. "Christ. Ed, can you get rid of that tacky Halloween decoration under your bed? It scares the shit out of me every time I go to piss in the middle of the night." I frowned. What was he talking about? I turned my head to follow his eyes. mine adjusting to the darkness. I normally kept my bedroom door open when I wasn't at home or sleeping. An unfamiliar white shape was under my bed, squished between it and the floor. It must be what Ryan had been seeing the past few weeks. My heart started to race in fear, and I found myself taking a few steps backwards until Ryan was in front of me. "That's not a mask," I whispered, too scared to think of anything else to say. We were both staring at a pale, smiling face staring at us sideways. It did look a little like a Halloween mask. The grin was unnaturally wide, its eyes dark, and so many teeth. After I spoke, everything moved in slow motion. The thing bolted from under the bed, a small body crawling at lightning speed on all fours toward us. Ryan screamed and immediately tripped. I was on the first step downward when I heard his body fall. I should have kept going, and yet I turned around to grab his arms, trying to drag him away. The small monster grabbed his legs and pulled him out of my grasp. I was shocked by how strong it was. My roommate started to cry and kick, unable to get away. The monster paused to make eye contact with me for a second. Long, greasy black hair covered part of her face. Pointed ears came out from under the black strands, and the skin was pale, almost waxy. She was wrapped in one of Ryan's stolen sheets. With an almost childlike grin, she started to drag a man twice her size into my room. His nails dug into the wooden floor. I grabbed his wrists only to be pulled along with him. He begged me not to let go when his legs disappeared under the bed. I heard awful crunching sounds as his screams of fear turned into screams of pain. No matter how hard I struggled, I simply was not strong enough to save him. To my horror, my hands gave out, and I watched him slip under the bed, never to be seen again. The moment he was gone, I shoved the bed out of the way, looking for him. Nothing. Just a normal floor between the pushed-aside storage bins. I couldn't help Ryan now, so I took the coward's way out. I left. I drove to work and parked my car. I couldn't head inside, so I just hung out in the parking lot, watching the storm and wondering what the hell had just happened. I avoided my place for a while. After couch hopping for a week or so, I knew I needed to get back home. The place was as I'd left it. The sandwich Ryan had knocked out of my hands rotted in the hallway. The nail marks were still on the floor, and his room was silent. I wanted to think I was crazy, that this didn't happen, but I needed to know for sure. It was hard, but I climbed into bed, eyes staring at the ceiling, waiting. Hours passed, and I started to drift off to sleep. I heard something and went to sit up when I felt a weight on my chest pinning me down. The pale, white, grinning face greeted me. The creature was on the smaller side, maybe 5 feet at the most. She was dressed in torn sheets and rags that smelled like something rotten, and a bit like Ryan's room. Her hands were pitch black with dangerous claws. The rags were wrapped around a plump body that knocked the wind from my chest when she sat on me. I knew I was going to be ripped apart if I didn't act fast. I had prepared for this. As her mouth came down, ready to tear into my face, I grabbed a fistful of bacon I had cooked beforehand. I shoved it into her mouth and then was able to scramble aside, still on the bed, watching her reaction. Confusion was on her face at first. Soon, she furiously chewed the food she was given. She jumped on the container with the rest of the treat beside my pillow. I watched her, a bit shocked my plan worked. I mean, who doesn't like bacon? When she finished, her small face sniffed around looking for more. She had calmed down and only nipped at my fingers to say she was still hungry. I think I can handle this. It's not as if I haven't dealt with feeding a roommate before. The little creature that came out from under my bed that night was still scary as hell, but she warmed up a little to me. I couldn't afford to move. Taking food home from work or buying roasted chickens appeared to solve my problem of not getting eaten like my previous roommate, at least for a while. It wasn't that simple, though. A week of only normal food got to her. I found her collapsed in the hallway, appearing weak and ill. She snapped at my hand when I tried to move her somewhere more comfortable. The dark thought came to me that I wasn't feeding her what she needed to live. I looked her over, debating on what to do. I could call someone, maybe the police, to take her away. But wouldn't she come back and kill me for that? Would she be able to fight them off? Even weakened, if she wanted to, she could kill me. What were my options here? Wait until she turned on me? If I stopped giving her meals, I knew for certain I would be her next one. I don't regret what I did next. I rode on a bike I borrowed from Ryan, knowing he wouldn't miss it, with a duffel bag on my back. I was careful to avoid main roads and anywhere that someone might see me. The straps of the bag dug into my shoulders, and sometimes a sharp kick came at my back. I finally stopped a few blocks away from my location and parked the bike. Carefully, I lowered the bag to the ground, opening it to let the contents free. The small creature darted out, racing towards a large car's shadow. She gave me a grin before her body sank into the darkness. A few months ago, a coworker of mine harassed an underage cashier we all saw as a little sister. She ended up quitting, and he got fired for a different offense. I've heard he's still sending her messages and bothering her. I once gave him a ride home before I was aware of what kind of person he was. Should his actions be a death sentence? No, probably not. Ryan didn't deserve what happened to him. I wasn't really sure what a person needed to do to be worthy of a gruesome death at the hands of that small monster. I don't know the full extent of her powers. I think she has a limit, distance-wise. She couldn't just appear under my old coworker's bed. I had to bring her a few blocks away. How many more people will need to suffer at her hands? And how many more people would I sacrifice to save my own skin? I wondered how long it would take for the police to catch on. I bet she would eat me in my prison cell, causing a bit of fuss for others to clean up. Yes, I was scared of her. And of dying. I wanted a simple life and to just relax. And yet, I felt an odd fondness toward her growing. I started to want to see her cheerful reactions after I gave her a tasty snack. Was that some sort of power she had? Or was I just messed up in the head? Does the answer really matter? After her meal, she came back to me covered in blood. I put her inside the duffel bag I bought at a thrift store so I could throw it away. Once we were home, I struggled to get her in a bath and then in clean sheets. My body screamed from exhaustion. I didn't know how long I could keep this up. Her small body crawled into bed, tucking next to mine like a cat. Yeah, I must be messed up for the sight of my sleeping new roommate making me happy. Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/JordanGroupeHorror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow, and see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.